Let's deal with this event column. It's really event type. This one. I don't know what's going to happen if I change this. Let's do something simple. Let's try to change this into a residence. Normally it will autofill, but I haven't made this an autofill yet, and I should do that right away. But I just want to see if there's any errors happening already. Okay, I had no idea that was actually going to work. I kind of thought it wasn't. If you go Control F5, I mean, you don't have to, you know it redrew because you watched it redraw. It went into the database. It was already working. When that kind of stuff happens, you just like go ahead and pat yourself on the head. You did something right. You changed the whole widget type. It's not a label anymore. There's no more overlay. It's a totally different type of widget. But you changed an occupation to a residence and it worked? My goodness. Okay, let's try to do something scary then. Let's try to change it into a wedding or something. Because that's a couple event. That shouldn't work, right? Ah, look, we opened our incompatible event type error. Well, this is good. I mean, this is a user error. This is what's supposed to happen. A couple event can't be changed to a non-couple event or vice versa. For example, a marriage can be changed to a wedding, but a death can't be changed to a divorce. Delete unwanted events and create new ones to replace them if they're incompatible in this way. To delete a conclusion, delete the event type in the first column. I don't really like the wording on that because the user not going to know what I'm talking about. I should say to delete a row, because when you delete a row, say if I go like this, backspace or delete and then tab out, then that should delete the whole row. The way that everything is arranged is supposed to be simple enough and intuitive enough that the user doesn't have to have a whole lot of understanding of terminology and nomenclature. TreeBard is about genealogy, not about TreeBard. So the first thing I'm going to do is change the wording on that message, and then the second thing I'm going to do is see what kind of errors we're getting here and when we're getting those errors. So if I was to open up events message, to delete a row in the conclusions table, let's not make them know what a conclusions table is. You should be able to use TreeBard without going and studying documentation. Now, what is our big fat problem here? Invalid command name, and then it gives the name of a widget. So they're saying command name, which is a little bit confusing, but that's what it always says. We're talking about a cell that no longer exists, and we're trying to refer to it. And this is happening on line 486. And it's probably happening because I used to, for a long time, I had the cell pool, which is, you know, the collection of cells in the table. There's a list arranged by row. For a long time, cell pool had 2,000 widgets pre-made and then just not shown, not gridded on the table. And then when you're done with them, you just remove them from the table, but you don't destroy them. And I just changed that like a week ago, and now suddenly we're destroying widgets instead and making new widgets. This error might have something to do with the fact that we're now destroying widgets when we didn't used to. So what this error message does is it deletes what the user has just typed into it. Remember, we changed residence to marriage. What I did was I deleted a residence event, and then this error ran. I want to do it over again. I don't remember what I did. There's that residence. There was two errors. The first error was when I tried to change residence to wedding. It went back to residence already because the code put that back. What is widge here? Widge is not defined in the enclosing scope of this nested function, but this enclosing scope is also a nested function. So what is widge in the main function? This is a huge method. So we'll go down to the main part of the function, which is going to be way down here below all these nested functions. Below that, below that, below that. See, that's a lot of stuff. That's a very big function. Sometimes I do nesting so that I don't have to make as many instance variables. Need to know where that widget is coming from. It's passed to update DB. What widget are we talking about? Pretty sure it's that one. I assume these are all going to do something to a table widget. This code could be slimmed down. I designed some fancy schmancy error code message once upon a time, and I've been using it ever since. I keep using it. Not that bad. Yes, Tkinter has its own error messages. But they're created in the time when Tkinter felt like one should follow the Windows themes. I want my error message to follow my color scheme, actually. And it's possible that Tkinter has been improved to where it will now use your dark Windows theme, but I wouldn't know that because I've made my own themes a long time ago. That's not a very good name. That's not a very good name, and that's not a very good name. They should be descriptive names, but at some point I got lazy with error messages, and I've been lazy with error messages ever since. Probably because the code's a little bit too clever. I don't care to be that clever most of the time. We'll do the same thing again. Change this to a wedding. Get the error message, click OK, and we're now on 504. Oh, way down here. Okay, in order to trace this error, we have to trace this widget. This widget comes to us by being passed when this runs. Update DB runs right here. Get final. It runs kind of indirectly, but this does run when you tab out of a widget. Okay, so if final is not equal to initial, if you've made an edit or a change of any kind in the table cell, which we did, we changed residence to wedding, then this code will run. The part we're concerned with is this. Get final also had widget passed to it, so let's go look at where widget comes from. So you're passing widget from function to function to function. Confusing, but sometimes you have to do it. Okay, edit cell runs on the focus out, and as I suspected, widget equals cell, and this is the cell that was made. The question is, why does this cell no longer exist? Was the table redrawn? If so, then that cell does no longer exist. That's the first question I want to answer. Did I redraw the table already? If so, I'd say that was premature. And like I said earlier, I don't want to redraw the table anymore. I want to format the cell when you edit the cell so that it changes to the right size. I'm tired of redrawing the table. You know, you've got this code in here, and it is some of the most convoluted code in TREEBARD. I don't really like it. I've never really liked it. Some of it is necessary. Obviously, you do have to redraw things from time to time. But if the user is already typing the stuff he wants in that cell, and if it's already going into the database, then it seems to me like redrawing the table every time you change one cell is overkill. And that's separate from the fact that it's ugly to watch all the widgets being recreated. Starting to get some inkling of understanding of how the changes in the design are affecting the user experience, and that's very important in TREEBARD. User experience is at the very top of the list of things we care about. TREEBARD must be beautiful. Are we redrawing the events table too early? Did you see that? It did redraw. You saw it redraw. Why did it redraw? Every time you change something, it redraws the table. I don't think it's a good idea to redraw the whole table if you're basically not changing something, because that's basically what we're doing. We're not changing something. We're saying, sorry, you can't do this. And we're putting the old stuff back in here and then redrawing the table anyway. Well, that's silly. We don't want to do that. So what caused it to redraw? Where is that triggered? Now that the widgets are being deleted and replaced every time that you redraw the table, you can't do that anymore. And anyway, it's totally superfluous. This is the line that caused the problem, but the redraw happened before the error message opened. Somewhere between here and here, we redrew the table. So you don't have to analyze all this code. You just have to see, in general, is it even possible that that redraw was triggered in here? I don't see how that could be possible. So let's think about where else that might happen before this ran. It has to be before this ran. Now, I don't claim to be a scientist. I'm definitely not a computer scientist, but if you learn to think scientifically, so what has to be true? Okay, that's how scientists are supposed to think, I guess. What causes this to run? Okay, something before this runs is going to be redrawing that table, right? Self.final is in event types because wedding is in event types. Somewhere before this line, we're redrawing. This is just setting a variable. This is running a function. This is just changing a string. All this does is gets information out of the database. Where are we redrawing? I've had this problem before. Are we redrawing the whole person tab? Redraw person tab is going to run redraw events table. I've had this problem before, and when I said that, I remembered this. Let's uncomment this. It's a test that detects where this function is being called from. And this is like some kind of technical Python that saved my life one day or something. I said, don't delete this. I don't want to research it next time I have this problem. Change the residence to a wedding, and a redraw is triggered on focus out before that error message opens. See, that's wrong. That should not happen. That was called in redraw GUI. Something in here is running redraw person tab, which in turn runs redraw events table. Their culprit is either here or here. How many different places in the whole app do we have the redraw GUI? Don't worry about anything below here where it says PyCache, never mind. Colorizer, we did not colorize anything. Events table, it's probably in there. Table model 24, no. Opening, no, we didn't open anything. Places, no, we're not dealing with places. And in redraw, there's only one of them, and that is the definition. So that's not running it, that's just defining it. Back to events table, here we're only importing it on line 6. Control F5, we did not push Control F5. It's on line 667. What is causing line 667 to run? That's the area of interest. We're in update DB somewhere. That's the main method. We know that is running. Don't know nothing till we solve the problem. And after we solve the problem, we don't need to know nothing. What is the main part of, it's way up here, update DB. The main part of it is going to have lines of code starting at indentation level number 2. So we go way down here past all these nested functions till we see code on level 2. 667 is in fact right here. If column number is not equals to 2, and obviously that's true because we're in column number 0, then we're going to redraw the GUI because we updated the DB, but we didn't update the database. We didn't change anything. We refused to change the database. We went ahead and tried to update the event type because we're in column 0. By the way, just because I said we're going to stop redrawing the GUI so much, I don't mean we're doing it right now. Don't change that now. You give me a heart attack. When you do that, you want to do it all by itself and don't make any other changes while you're doing it because it gets kind of complicated. What I'd like to do is find out why the heck is update DB even running when we have refused the edit. It's running right here. So if we're going to refuse to run this, why don't we do it here? Cellpool used to have permanent widgets in it. They just got grid forgot instead of destroyed. Now we can't run update DB for a bad reason. We got to have good reason to run it. So how am I going to say don't do this if the edit was refused? I want to go to update event type and not run that under certain conditions. I want to say even if I ran this, don't run this. I don't want to make a change that affects everything because particulars, age, and date already work. I don't want to have any effect on them. So I want to run this conditionally. If event type OK is true, then we're going to update the event type. Here's the part where we were running that error message. What if we do this? Give it a default value. What this means is if you're trying to change a couple event to something that is not a couple event. First off, let's test this. This should work. Doesn't. Need to give this default value a little earlier in the main code before this one is called. Occupation. But what happens if you try to change occupation to wedding? We want the error message to open, say no can do, the TREEBARD error message. We want it to go back to occupation, and we want to have no Python errors. It went back to occupation. We got our TREEBARD error message. Now what happens when you click OK? Still trying to refer to a widget that doesn't exist. So everything I did works except the part that I was trying to fix. We go back to 504 because we no longer remember what we were doing or why. Something, somewhere, already put occupation back in. So it's possible that from the very beginning, I could have done this. All right, let's see. Went back to occupation, opened the error message, and there's no longer an error. Okay, and test this one more time. Change this to residence. That works. And the next step is to put the autofill functionality in here, so when I type an O, it says occupation. I don't have to type that big old long word. See you next time.